Alaska Trail. And in addition to Xavier and myself, I will be joined by Zach Millian from the BLM, and Zach is the BLM Alaska Program Lead for Recreation, Travel Management, and National Conservation Lands. So I will start with the little update on the Alaska Lawn Trail, what we've done, where we're going, how much funding we received. So most of you probably are familiar with the concept. If you ever attended any of the Alaska Trails events, like Trails conferences in the spring or land manager forums in the fall, you're familiar with the concept because we take every opportunity to update you on this project. Excited about it. So okay, so but to just refresh, the vision for the Alaska Lawn Trail is a world-class trail system connecting more than 500 miles of Alaska's iconic terrain and diverse communities along the proposed route from the Pacific, Seward, and to the interior, Fairbanks, embracing the many ways Alaskans recreate outdoors. That means many modes of transportation, including motorized where possible, and bolstering the Alaska economy by attracting visitors from all over the world. Ambitious vision, and we're making a lot of steps towards that to accomplish that vision. About 20%, so on this map, you can see in red, well, in blue first. In blue are the segments of the trail that are already on the ground, including the snow machine route between Palmer and Trapper Creek approximately. But about 20% of the route is in existence. But that means about 80% needs planning and subsequent construction. And we're working on that for the past, well, when I say we, I should clarify, Alaska Trails has been spearheading this project for the past 3 years, but we're a coalition of many partners along the route between Seward and Fairbanks that include federal agencies, state agencies, and various nonprofits and local governments. Yes.
Sorry, spoiler alert.
No, it's okay. So I wanted to show this because the Alaska Lawn Trail has been receiving a lot of momentum, a lot of support for the past 3 years. We're happy to see this. And we've been approached by many news outlets to produce stories about the trail. So this one is on the current November issue of the Alaska Business Magazine. And as Steve mentioned, the article is pretty well written. I encourage you to. Yes, it's great. I think. So I just want to mention this because we have done a few announcements in August about changing the name to Alaska Traverse. And in further consideration, the coalition decided to keep the Alaska Lawn Trail for the time being, mostly because of the current, about to start work on the National Scenic Trail feasibility study, and also kind of the fact that the world knows the project as Alaska Lawn Trail, and we don't want to confuse the public for the next 3 or 5 years for the duration of the feasibility study, and we want to coordinate with the feasibility study with the BLM and make sure that the public is not confused, the agencies are not confused, funders are not confused. So it's for the benefit of the project. And as we go forward, maybe another name will come up that will be popular and supported. So as I mentioned, a lot of support, the momentum going a lot for the trail, and I'm happy to show these numbers. In the past 2 years, we've been successful in securing funds from the state capital budget and from federal appropriations with the help of Senator Murkowski. For the state funding from the capital budget, we have secured $5.6 million, which is unprecedented for trail projects supported by the state. We're happy to see that. And for the federal funding, over $11 million has been secured over the past 2 years. And overall, $17 million is going to planning and construction and maintenance projects for the segments of the Alaska Long Trail. This is a list of 10 trail projects that have been funded through the state capital budgets over the past 2 years.
You can ask them to mute themselves.
Okay. And if you look at the list, you can see that all of these projects are in the Anchorage area. Our coalition submitted projects, trail projects, have been submitting projects to the state capital, for the state capital budget, for the duration, for the length of the trail between Seward and Fairbanks. So we submitted projects in Fairbanks, North Star Borough, in Denali Borough, and Matsu Borough, but for the past 2 years, those projects have not been supported yet. But we will continue submitting those projects, and in hopes that we will have champion state legislators who will support those projects in the budget. But we are grateful to the Anchorage area senators Tom Begich last year, and this year to Senator Bill Velikowski for being champions of these projects for the Anchorage area. These projects will provide important critical connections to make sure that the trail system is connected. And actually, these projects will help us finish the most completed section of the Alaska Long Trail between Seward and Eagle River. So we're grateful to see these projects be funded. And I will show a picture of that map in a second. So for the federal appropriations funding received through the help of Senator Murkowski, most funding came to the Chugach National Forest. Chugach National Forest is a very important and very active partner in the coalition for the Alaska Long Trail, and their mission to finish the southern track of the Iditarod National Historic Trail aligns with our mission to provide a continuous trail between Seward and Anchorage for now, and further on to Fairbanks. And so Chugach National Forest received over $8 million for the trail projects and bridges to fill in the gaps between Seward and Turnagain Pass and Turnagain Arm, actually. So that funding has been applied, and the work is underway to build those connections. Also, Denali Borough received over $2 million for design and engineering of a section of separate pathways along Parks Highway, close to the entrance to the Denali National Park, providing pedestrian connections to the park. And the BLM, and Zach is going to be talking about it later today, BLM received $1 million for the feasibility study to determine the suitability of the Alaska Long Trail for the National Scenic Trail designation. And so I mentioned that the most complete section of the route is between Seward and Eagle River. And that's the projects that have been funded over the past 2 years are helping us make fill in the gaps and make those connections. About 177, the whole route is about 167 miles, and somebody can walk the trail or ski the trail for about 117 miles. And the roads, the existing gaps on the roadways are about 50 miles. So the planning and projects that have been funded are helping to fill in those 50-mile roads, the gaps, those 50 miles of gaps. So we hope that in the next 5 years, there will be a continuous trail system between Seward and Eagle River. In terms of planning north of Anchorage, north of Eagle River, it's a little bit more daunting because there are some segments that are already there, and we're trying to plan and envision the propose some routes to connect those existing segments. And we're working with communities right now. We're working very actively in the Matsu borough. Sam Dinges, who is our Matsu Lawn Trail coordinator, unfortunately is not able to be here today, but he is working with communities and governments and legislators to figure out connections between Palmer and Cantwell. So here you can see the list of connections that we kind of broke down the route into to make it simpler to think about. So right now, the first one is Chugiak to Palmer connection, and that one is on the planning for that connection is underway thanks to the state capital budget fund received last year, and Anchorage Park Foundation is working on that planning project. And then the next section between Palmer and Talkeetna is kind of the unknown. That's probably the most daunting section at the moment. It's about 85 miles or so, and more planning needs to happen. And we're submitting a project for we're submitting a request for planning funds to the state legislature for that particular section this year. And then from Talkeetna to Denali State Park, there are some options, but again, more planning needs to happen further down the road. From Denali State Park to Cantwell, we are hoping to work with the Adna Inc. Corporation to find suitable routes for that section. And from Cantwell to Healy, again, a little bit more planning needs to happen. From Healy to Nenana, we're thinking a very exciting route would be a water route. So this is the Alaskan Trail, right? So we want to incorporate all kinds of ways that Alaskans play outside, including rafting. So that could be a great option. Healy to Nenana, class 1, class 2 rafting trip, instead of plunging through muddy and mosquito kind of land. So somebody could sit on the raft and go down downstream. So, and from Nenana to Fairbanks, it's another section that needs a little bit more planning and probably coordination with the Division of Forestry. The current, the most feasible and maybe interesting current route, it goes through the Titanana Valley State Forest, but more work needs to happen with the Division of Forestry to make that happen. So, just wanted to mention, so we have assembled about 27 projects from Fairbanks to Anchorage that total about $21 million for a shovel-ready or planning-ready project that could be funded in the next year or two. And we will continue working to secure funding for these projects, this legislative session, and also using other funding sources, such as hopefully infrastructure funds from the Alaska DOT, federal funds that are coming to DOT. Yeah, so that's my portion of the presentation. I will invite 2 questions after each presenter, but maybe leave the rest of the questions for the rest of the presentation for all of us. So if there are any 1 or 2 immediate questions,
how's the planning coming for legislative requests for this upcoming session? And then if people had suggestions about that, how could they get involved?
Yes, so all of these projects, 27 projects, will probably be submitted to the legislature and see what happens, depending on the budget this year. And if people have suggestions about projects, they can email us on our website, and this presentation will be posted on our website, and there's a contact form on our webpage. You can contact us if you would like to connect. Any questions in the chat? Okay, so I would like to invite Xavier. Xavier, are you?
He's going to be really loud.
Hello.
Can you introduce him while I turn this down?
Yes, Xavier is Xavier Lopez. He used to be an Alaskan, but now he's a retired Alaskan Texan, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so he has been working with Alaska Trails for the past 3 years, and have been producing maps of the routes, collecting information about proposed segments from many of you. Some of you have been in contact with him over the past 3 years to provide him information about possibilities. And yeah, I'm trying to stop sharing screen for myself. Just a second. Here we go. Yeah.
And then did you click that he could share as well? Yeah. Oh, I think so.
So Xavier, I think you should be able to share screen if you would like.
Yeah, are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and looking at my other screen, yeah, it looks like we're sharing. All right,
Yeah.
everyone. So I guess this is just going to be an update from the map world of things for the Alaska Long Trail. If you've, I guess, been keeping up with the Alaska Long Trail and trying to understand a little bit more information about the route, you may be familiar with the Alaska Long Trail workbook, which is available on the website. And it's just full of information in static format for maps. We've all seen this overview of the trail as it was presented earlier by Mariyam. As you keep scrolling, this workbook goes section by section, and it provides a detail of the route from south to north. It breaks it up into little segments, gives you a little overview. And in the map, it gives you information on each segment, its seasonality, and its user type. There's also in purple identified gaps, whether they're road connections, whether they're concepts for new trails, or works in progress. Now the workbook has been a great tool, although it's static and there's not really much exploration you could do rather than what's provided on the page in front of you. So over the past couple of months, I've really been just trying to get everything online so there's more interactivity. Let me close this real quick. So if you wanted to try this yourself, unfortunately, it's not going to work on mobile devices yet, but I will soon program it to do so. But at home on your desktop, you could go over to the Alaska Trails webpage, go to the Alaska Long Trail. And if you scroll down on the left here above the overview map, there's a tab that says Map Portal. Going to the Map Portal will take you to the main page, of course, beautiful banner of Alaska's mountains. So here we're greeted with, overview of the trail. You could zoom around wherever you want. On the side here, you can see that as I zoom, you could get a little bit more information, number of miles of candidate trails in the area, the amount of interim road connections in the area, and the total length in the area. So, for example, say we're just going to cut it in the Kenai region from Seward to around the Portage Curve. You can see that there's 127 miles of total connections. That includes 36.2 miles of on-road connections and 90.9 miles of candidate trails. These candidate trails are existing trails in this region, specifically the Iditarod National Historic Trail. This is, I think this is a lot better than looking at a static map, especially the fact that you could zoom in and get a little bit more detail. Because as you zoom in, you can see all the scenery, all the terrain. But not only that, you can click a segment and you could get a little bit more information from it on the side right here. You get access to trail guides, the surface of the trail, if it's a snow trail, if it's a Terra trail, its summer usage. In this case, I believe this is Bear Lake Trail. Yeah. Bear Lake Trail is non-motorized in the summer, and in the winter, it is motorized, at least along this section. You could also see the user groups that are allowed on the trail and its estimated length. Scrolling a little bit more down, you could see some more planning info. Not all trails are going to have planning info. Of course, this is going to get updated as we go through the process of, I guess, just investigating a little bit more. And then scrolling down, you get some information about state budget stuff. So like I said, you could go to the trail guides, you could click them, and it'll take you right to the Forest Service website with their trail guide if it loads. There we go. So yeah, you could get a little bit more information on the trail itself from an authoritative source. Oop, okay. Spoilers. Okay, so that's the first map that you could see, and you could get a little bit more information. Now let's try to see like a current project on this portage curve. So anything in purple, again, is some sort of connection that doesn't exist yet or will plan to exist in the future. So clicking this one, it's the portage curve multimodal connector. It's populated with what the trail is meant to be in the future. So we know that it's going to be a multi-use trail, and in the winter, it's going to be motorized. And then you could also see more planning info here. You could see what it is, which is an identified gap, and it's a work in progress. So a little note here says see supporting information for more. So instead of a trail guide, it'll take you to the project webpage, and you could read a little bit more about it as well. So going on, the whole point of the map portal is just, get this information out to the public, just so that you could get involved and just ask Alaska Trails a little bit more of what's going on. The workbook is going to be in a phase 2 coming soon. So if you're looking at the workbook now or have been looking at the workbook, it is a little bit more out of date. So everything on the map portal is most likely up to date. So at the top, there are some tabs here, and I'm going to go to the interactive maps because I'm pretty sure that's what most of you are interested in. And here are a few custom maps that we've created, and I'll take you through a couple and just see how they are. So this map right here, everything is gray right now. It's because it's a filter map, which shows state budget information, as Mariyam touched on earlier in this presentation. So up here at the top, you can see that there's fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 projects. If you're interested in looking at all the funded projects, just flick them on and everything will turn green. And just like the map I showed before, you could click a segment and you can get a little bit more information about it. There we go. So yeah, right here it says about, you can see the total funded. You could also see its TPS number, and you could also get a link to all the projects on the page of Alaska Trails if you want to read a little bit more about them as well. You could also see projects that were not funded. Anything in red here were stuff that was submitted, and unfortunately, they weren't accepted in the state budget or were not included. You could see that some projects up here in Fairbanks were submitted, but unfortunately, they weren't accepted. So moving on, I don't want to take too much time here. Another thing we have been looking at is access points along the trail. So everything in green here is an existing access point, and everything in purple could be something from a plan, such as the Chugach State Park Management Plan. Again, like before, you could click on something and just get a little bit more information about it. But this is pivotal in understanding where you can access the trail and how many accesses are in an area. On top of that, you can see that there's a bunch of gauges on the bottom that are just kind of going everywhere with numbers. On the left, the bottom left, you could see how many of these trailheads or access points have parking areas. You can see how many of them have a toilet or how many of them have a campground or campsite available at the trailhead itself. This map right here is a weather watch map. So unfortunately, I'm in Texas and I don't know what's going on right now in Alaska weather-wise. But if we click this one here, we can see that there's a special weather statement, and maybe some of you can look outside the window and confirm that, possibly. It says gusty winds and warming temperatures, 40 to 55 miles per hour winds. Wow, that's really high. That's crazy. But yeah, so this gives a little bit more insight onto maybe if you're trying to hike the route on whether it's safe to go out during a certain period of time. All this information comes from NOAA, so if you want to know more info, you click it and it takes you right to their website. Last but not least, this map right here is probably the most intricate one, and it kind of has a lot of buttons to it, but it gives you the most things to play around with. So on the left side here, you could see a legend, and I'm going to hide it really quick because I want to show off these little tabs right there. I'm going to zoom into the Anchorage area. Now, right now, the trail is visualized in seasonality, where green is a year-round season, where that trail can be accessed year-round. Orange is, it's limited to summer only because either in the management plan, they don't maintain it, or it's just not safe to hike. For example, Crow Pass, there's a lot of avalanche danger, so it's not really wise to hike that during the winter. So, for example, say I want to see summer-only routes. I could flick that on, and it'll hide all the winter routes. So you can see that blue line kind of faded away. So you could see where connections are missing through seasonality. You could also see which trails you want to have a certain user type on. So say I want to do biking, right? I'll turn everything else off. And you can see, oh, I think I inverted the relationship. Let me see. Do no. So what you can see is that you can go in here and see how you would like to hike the trail, how you would like to, what trails are available for your user group. Let's see. I'll do a more simple one because this one might be, there might be too many things flicked on. Like I said, it's a little bit finicky, so I am working on making it a little bit more user-friendly. I'll do this one because it's a little bit more simple. So right here across going to Eklutna, these orange routes right here are backcountry social routes. So they're not designated trails, but they are routes that people use maybe across the ridgeline or to get across from valley to valley. So right now I have that flicked on. And if you don't want to see that as part of your itinerary, you could flick it off and they will go away. Perhaps it's not happening right now because I am, it's all these settings probably, but nonetheless, you get the gist of it. You could also filter out whether you want to see the concepts or the identified gaps. You can see all the purple went away when I flick that on and off. So that's a couple of things that we have improved on the mapping side of things for the Alaska Long Trail. So going back to the hub, hopefully I'm not over time here, and you can stop me if you want to.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So right here, Mariyam also showed the hike Seward to Eagle River. Some of this data is a bit outdated. Again, it'll get updated when available. But the whole plan is to be able to designate or share with you, GPX files so that you could upload them and then go out here and hike it yourself. Here's another map just showing that small portion. You could see right here in X's, these are specific obstacles. For example, here it popped up Bertha Creek. It's a dangerous crossing and it can only be crossed at low water, but may require some skill to cross it. So these are just some things that we're trying to implement on the trail to make it safe for, all types of users of any skill level to use the trail. Last but not least, this tab at the very end is get involved with planning. So if you want to share with us a specific comment on a route, or you have any suggestions on where a route can go, where there is some sort of gap, and we don't have any, suggestions for candidate trails, you could come here and submit your comment. So I'll do one here on the left, for example. So it's asking me if I want to comment on a specific part of the AKT. I'll say sure. And you get greeted with a little bit more questions. What are you trying to comment on? So in that case, you could zoom in on this map and it'll pop up with little IDs. This helps us understand what place you're talking about. So for example, in the Matsu, this is a bike path. You just type in MSB to C. And then if you didn't want to look for the code, you could also just drop a pin. So here I'll just drop a pin right there and it'll place your comment there. So why are you commenting on this segment? Let's see, I'll express my support. I do want to see, the Matsu get connected to Anchorage area and up to Talkeetna. So I'll just express it here. Would love to see a connection from Anchorage through Matsu to Talkeetna. what do you like most about this segment? So maybe you're commenting on a part of the trail and you want to explain why you love it so much. So for in this one, accessibility, because everyone could definitely access bike paths. Additional comments, maybe some segments cross streets, or the pavement needs repaving. You could also attach some photos, supporting documents, provide us with your email if you would like to get back with us. You don't have to, or your name. So in this case, I'll keep it anonymous and then I'll submit it. So that is about it for the map portal. So I guess that's it for me. So Mariyam, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Xavier. So there is a question we'll take 1 or 2 questions now. So from Ben in the chat, is praising your cartography, which is true, stellar cartography. Do you have a scale dependent base map? What's the basement you're using at larger scales?
Yeah, I do. So here at larger scales, I'll actually turn on a layer that I didn't show. On this layer, this is Parks and Recreation. So from here, you could see that it's a little bit more as if you were looking at a paper map. Everything's kind of, less detailed. It's kind of, it looks drawn. So as you go in, yeah, it's scaled by scalage. When you go in, you see more information such as peaks and river names. So if you zoom back out, you don't see that anymore. And then the closer you get, you could see topo lines as well. So I do plan on making it a little bit more, user friendly at the scales that you want to see. And you can also play around with this. So everything is green right now because I have this boundary on. So you could flick that off and you can see the beautiful, colorful terrain here, all the blues, the whites, and the browns. So yeah, at larger scales, it's just a little bit more vague, and at closer scales, you get more detail.
Thank you, Xavier. Yes, we encourage you to check the map portal. It's accessible from the Alaska Trails website, from the Alaska Lawn Trail page. And yeah, there's a lot of information there. Thanks, Xavier. Let's see. Right. So I would like to invite Zach Millian to be our last presenter for this presentation. And let's see if I can close this. Oh, hold on. Is it? Okay. And Zach is the BLM Alaska program lead for recreation, travel management, and national conservation land.
Can you do your duplicates, or how should I get it big?
And we'll work a little bit on the technical situation here. Hold on just a second. Let me share screen. Going between presentations. Working?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
I can show which one to advance.
Press. Yeah, one of those. Oh, here. Here. Yep. Thank you, Zach, for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Like Mariyam said, my name is Zach Millian. I work for the Bureau of Land Management. I'm the recreation program lead, including national conservation lands, which the proposed Alaska Long Trail falls into. As Mariyam stated earlier, we were assigned as the BLM the responsibility to complete the feasibility study for the proposed Alaska Long Trail. While this has been garnering some support and momentum over the last decade, over the last couple of years, quite a bit of development has happened and momentum. And so what I'm here to talk about is the study component. That is the proposal to see if the proposed Alaska Long Trail meets the suitability requirements to be included in the National Trail System as a National Scenic Trail. So a couple of things on the background. As I stated, it's gotten momentum over the last decade, but some serious momentum started in around 2021, where Alaska Trails started conceptualizing the fleshed out route of a 500-mile route between Seward and Fairbanks using multi-braided routes, which are existing and conceptualized. It traverses a lot of different ownership, including U.S. Forest Service, BLM, Alaska State Parks, Alaska Department of Natural Resources, ANSA lands, Alaska Native corporations, and local governments and borough lands. So there's a lot to consider in this, and a lot is going into the process. Last year, last spring at the Trails Forum, Senator Murkowski mentioned her support of the concept. And said that she intended to move the project forward. And then we started working last year as the BLM with the Senate Budget Committee or Appropriation Committee to determine what it may look like cost-wise to perform this study. And I'll go into this later, but it was an interesting process because this is the first one the BLM has ever done nationally. Most of these have been handled by the Park Service, a few from the Forest Service, and then some from an organization, the Bureau of Recreation, which is no longer existing. So our assignment came out of the fiscal year 2023 Omnibus Appropriations Act. And what it talks about is it has an amendment in there to the National Trail System Act, specifically directing the Secretary of the Interior through the BLM to complete a study on the proposed Alaska Long Trail. We were given, as Mariyam spoke about, we were given $1 million for the overall project. That includes, funds we've used for contracting to help facilitate the study, staff time to do it, travel for meetings, setting up meetings that we'll have to do along the 500-mile route, and all the other things that we need to conduct while performing this. We're directed to work with specific entities, which we'll go over in a minute. And then, as I mentioned, this is the first one of these that the BLM has done nationally, not just in Alaska. So it's been exciting to work on, but it comes with a lot of obviously a lot of learning opportunities and a lot of things that we have to figure out while we work on this. So what we've done today, we were technically right at the turn of 2023, were assigned this whenever the president signed the budget for fiscal year 2023. We started working on a contract package because we knew there's a time limit on this. Through the National Trail System Act, it states we have to have the study completed and transmitted to Congress within 3 fiscal years of the time of the assignment. And while, at first glance, you may say, okay, well, that's not that big of a deal. It's a ton of coordination with different landowners and examining all the gap analysis, looking at the GIS. It's a lot. It's turning into more and more work every day. So we awarded a contract in support of this through a company that specializes in travel management planning, and has served as a subcontractor with the Park Service on a couple of these studies before. And they also have done a lot of work on the Iditarod here in Alaska on some of the inventory work. So they're versed in both national and localized Alaska specific things. We're still working on the project milestones, like to really get everything solidified. And then just last week, we had our initial stakeholder meeting with the required stakeholders in that came out of the FY23 Omnibus. So we're still figuring out a few more people we need to contact and developing everything moving forward to our public phase. So here's a map, and I apologize for the scale. Just fitting this into a PowerPoint slide at 500 miles is tough. But on the left, you see, I admit it looks sort of like a golf course layout, but on the left, you have the ownership, and on the right, you have the actual terrain, exact representation. These are the proposed routes. These may change as we move forward, of course, but when we start these studies, you have to have a baseline to start with as a proposal. And so this is what was seen essentially by the Senate. And so that's what we're moving forward with as the initial proposal. As you can tell, all the blue, that's state of Alaska land. So there's quite a bit. The green at the base is Forest Service. As you get up there to Turnigan Arm and Cook Inlet, you get some mixed ownership with state parks, borough land, et cetera. The only real BLM land that this crosses is right there in the center, just south of Denali National Park. That's the yellow land there. And then a portion, very small portion of it does go through the northern section of Denali National Park. That's the purple. All the way up, going up into the, the Fairbanks North Star Borough. So we're breaking this down into quadrants as we move forward, because we're going to be hosting some public meetings beginning next April. And as we move forward with that, it's going to be a lot easier to get public comment and to work with the public that way. So the people we're required in the omnibus to work with, Secretary of Agriculture through the Forest Service, obviously because the first section through the southern track of the Iditarod is on Forest Service land. State of Alaska, and that represents all the different state of Alaska agencies, including DNR, state parks, Alaska Railroad, Fish and Game. So there's quite a few to work with from the state. The units of local government, so all the boroughs, Kenai, Matsu, Denali, Fairbanks North Star Borough, Municipality of Anchorage. We've all made contact with all of them. We're working with each of them. The Alaska Native Corporations. So there's several of those Native corporations that we're working with that part of the proposed route traverses or could potentially. Representatives of the private sector, and that has an asterisk next to it, simply because that's become the largest workload of this project, is identifying all those unique parcels that so we're trying to run a half-mile buffer either side of the proposed routes of the private landowners. And as that, if you go back to the map and look at that, that's well over 1,000 unique parcels already for private ownership. So we're still working on that and formulating a way that we're going to coordinate with those individuals, whether it actually, potentially comes right up against their land, or just as a notification for something like this, obviously. And then in addition, we've contacted tribal governments that are 10 miles either side of the proposed routes. So we've made those contacts, we've sent the letters out, we're getting the feedback, and we're working our way through that. The general process is this: starting at 1, going in a clockwise fashion. We have the assignment of the feasibility study through legislation. A small asterisk to that is not all trails in this National Scenic Historic Trails have begun through a study. Some have been designated by Congress, but in this situation, we have been assigned a study, and so we have to go forward with this based on the parameters of the National Trail System Act. So we work on the study number 2 there with the 9 criteria from the National Trail System Act, which we'll cover in the next slide. We complete the study within 3 fiscal years and submit it back to Congress. And then number 4 there, Congress looks at it, reviews it, and then finally, Congress and only Congress can establish the trail after the study. It's totally their decision. After we complete the study, that's where it ends on our part until we get further direction. And then if it were to be designated as a National Scenic Trail, then comes the comprehensive management plan and more work for the specificity of it. So what is the study? These are a couple of important things I want to go over just to make sure everyone understands what they are and what they aren't. So they're just findings of the proposed route and the suitability or the desirability based on the criteria in the National Trail System Act to Congress, but whether this would be practical or suitable to designate as a National Scenic Trail. I say National Scenic Trail because that is what we were assigned to look at. It could be a National Scenic or Historic Trail, but we were specifically, National Historic Trails have to meet certain criteria, and we were directed to look at this as a National Scenic Trail. So number 2 down there, they're a fact-finding assignment to look at the criteria and to look at all the different things that have to go into it to see if to have Congress make an informed decision. And then there's the official review of the proposed route. Lots of gaps, easement authorizations that might be needed, and all those kind of things to make an informed decision on the long-term designation of a potential trail. So these are I won't read all these out, but we'll highlight a couple of these. These are there's technically 11 criteria in the National Trail System Act. The last 2 are applied to National Historic Trails only, but these are in the act that go all the way back to 1968. And so that is still what we have to follow, and these are the components we have to look at. But basically, like hitting number 2, the areas next to it that could be used for development, or number 3, the characteristics which would make it suitable. Number 4 is a big one, the current status of land ownership, any potential use. So we have to take a look at that. Number 6, plans for developing and maintaining the trail and the cost of it. Because if a trail gets a designation, there are federal funds that come for the maintenance of it. So that's something that obviously Congress has to look at before something like this is designated. Number 8, working with state or other political subdivisions might be expected to participate. The National Trail System Act was really inventive in their approach all the way back to 68. Then that they knew that it required lots of partnerships with different land management agencies, because it's pretty rare that you can have a long distance trail with one landowner. We see that with the Iditarod here, it's multiple ownership. And then number 9, the relative uses of the lands involved with the designation of the trail, and what that might look like. So these are the things that are the basis. There's a lot more that goes into this, but these are the primary criteria that we have to follow in these studies. And then what isn't in a study, I think this is an important part. We're not at the end of this making an authorization or a decision to designate this trail, nor does this recommendation we send to Congress authorize any trail building. Whatever is going on individually, regionalized in anticipation of this, or that is being done as just a good concept for more recreation access, doesn't in and of itself mean that will be part of a National Scenic Trail, because Congress and only Congress can designate that. So once we make our recommendation based on this, they can move forward with it, and only then can the entire unit potentially be a National Scenic Trail. This is not a management plan. As I stated, once we're done with the recommendation, we move on. If it gets designated, it gets a comprehensive management plan. And then for those that work with federal agencies, you hear the word NEPA. While typically, NEPA is used for any decision-making process, we do have a categorical exclusion, which allows us to work for analytical studies and congressional reports. And the benefit to having that is that our BLM system called e-planning, which has all of our land use plans and NEPA actions on it, will allow us to capture public comment. And so that's going to be the real benefit to using that. Just a couple more slides. Basic timeline. So we started this month in the stakeholder engagement and the public input. We're still working with more agencies, more stakeholders, and as we for the required stakeholders from the law. And then we're going to branch out more to our core representation group and start working, with the public more on this. We're also developing with our contractor an Esri story map. So this will be something we want to have that can be useful along the duration of this project, because we are going to be working through roughly summer of 2025 to get this completed. And so we want to have updates on that. That'll be hosted through our e-planning site. After, as I stated, roughly the first 2 weeks in April, we are going to be having public meetings, and we will have public meetings in about 5 different locations throughout the state. We're tentatively scheduled to do Seward, Anchorage, some location in the valley, the Matsu Valley, Cantwell, and then Fairbanks. And we'll be setting up a regionalized approach like that. So, we're still developing those 5 public meetings. That's actually quite a bit of work to set those up and in a sequential order, probably within like a long week. So that will be coming up in April. And then we'll be working on the development of the route evaluations, any alternative routes, gap analysis, all that kind of thing. And then we'll continue coordination and consultation with the stakeholders and the public as we finalize the recommendation for Congress, and we will get that to them no later than September of 2025. So that is our rough timeline for moving the study forward. And then that is all I have for this. I used to work in Western Oregon for BLM's picture. I took this is the Pacific Crest Trail and the BLM managed Cascade Siskiyou National Monument. Anyway, that's all I have, and I'll
Thanks, Zach.
questions.
So, how about we take a couple of questions for Zach, if there are any questions directly to Zach. Yes, Mark.
Could you describe some of the advantages and resources that would be available to this group, financial or otherwise?
Well, there would be, I can't speak to the amount of funding, but there would be some level of federal funding to secure a long-term corridor for this effort, similar to what's going on is I was about to say our only other national historic trail. We have two now in Alaska, but the only one that spans, a long distance in Alaska that has multiple ownership. There are multiple management agreements that are in place for the Iditarod, say. And through these mechanisms, it allows us funding, which we can utilize to manage the overall trail corridor. And it would be a benefit through this national designation for more of a long-term easement or corridor management for the entirety of the route. So through this designation, there would just be a more secure, long-term, less likely to change management-wise route for the trail.
And does that management include construction and maintenance of actual trail?
Well, that once again, that is a pretty complex procedure that we have to work with the local land management agencies. That requires approval. It requires public easements. So I can't necessarily say that through the designation it would necessarily authorize the construction on something that was not a federal parcel of land. That requires individual working relationships and authorization locally. So I would just say that the designation itself builds long-term, I guess the best way I can say it is it builds a long-term management and long-term easement or for the route.
Zach, can I add to that?
Mhm.
The funding we have received from federal sources, which is federal appropriations over the past 2 years, requires federal nexus. So some kind of providing either access to federal land or be on federal lands. So that's why the federal appropriations funding went to Chugach National Forest, because the projects were on the National Forest land, and to Denali Borough because it provided a pedestrian, non-motorized access to the Denali National Park. So similarly, it's possible that if the trail is designated as a National Scenic Trail, there is more chance of federal appropriations possibly going towards the trail. It's not guaranteed
No, it's not.
It's a completely different process.
Well, I would just say that going back to the National Trail System Act was very looking in their approach to this. It really allows a lot of opportunities for the federal administering agency to work with private, other state, other whatever landowners to secure these easements and right of ways. So it gives us just a lot of tools to get that to come to fruition.
Thank you. Any other?
I got one here. So you got the PCT out there. Are there, can you mention some other National Scenic Trails that people might be familiar with, and any of those analogous or similar to the proposed Alaska Long Trail?
Well, I mean, there's quite a few National Scenic Trails across the nation. There are a couple that are more BLM centric, at least, which that doesn't mean just because we're the agency that is conducting the study, obviously doesn't mean that we have the most land, because we don't on this for this route. But there are some, going of course to like the Appalachian Trail on the East Coast, that and the Pacific Crest were the first two in the 1968 Act. Lots more have been added since then. All the way up, the northern portion of Maine to the Continental Divide Trail, the Arizona Scenic Trail. There's just a host of trails across the nation. Lots of historic trails, of course, in various places, but those have to have a nexus to some historical event. Whereas these are set up, were purely designated because of their scenic or aesthetic opportunities and a long distance opportunity. So I would say those would be the first couple. I know some of the questions have come up about motorized activity. Per the National Trail System Act, motorized activity technically is not allowed on national scenic trails. However, Congress, and whenever they designate the trail, can authorize motorized activity. So that is all dependent on what their final decision would be. The Continental Divide Trail is an example of that. So ultimately, whatever gets either put in a study or in the actual authorization is dependent on what Congress's input is on that.
Can I ask one question? We have heard questions about the potential impact of the National Scenic Trail designation on the trail use, access. Are there any restrictions that the National Scenic Trail designation has to put on the trail?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's general guidelines about, it allows for development, it allows for facilities along the route, it allows for access points. The only thing that's technically spelled out is that generally that motorized activity is traditionally not authorized on it, but once, like I said, it can be through congressional decision. So the quick answer is, other than that, not really. And these are all the aspects that go into this study that we have to take a look at and know our regionalized context, know the users, and that's why the public engagement and the stakeholder engagement is such a huge part of this project. It literally is like 65% of the total project workload is just working with the stakeholders and eventually the public to get the input on this. So that all gets factored into the recommendation we make. Cool.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Yep. Right, okay. So for any questions about the Alaska Lawn Trail, I would welcome you to come to visit our Alaska Trails website. We have a very informative page about the Alaska Lawn Trail with access to maps, information about the BLM directed National Scenic Trail feasibility study, and so on. Thank you for attending this morning's presentation on the Alaska Lawn Trail.
Thanks, Mariyam. Finished a little bit early, everybody, but that's good. Let's take a break and we'll meet back here at 11:30. We'll watch a short video on the